I'm not too sure that there is like one history of our world, but once all these old texts start coming out, we'll at least get to see what a history of our world is. I think it's no coincidence that so many thousands and thousands of people are experiencing near-death experiences, because this alone is raising the consciousness. And the more people it happens to, the more the collective will raise the consciousness. Like everything is happening now to raise the collective consciousness, everything. And they were basically saying, that the US government can never admit to any of this stuff because they'll never be taken seriously ever again. And they're supposed to be the number one world, leaders. If they publicly admit that they've lied to their people, they're never going to get back from that. These are heart-led ones like us. And they don't mean any harm at all. They're actually trying to help us. They've been helping us for thousands of years. So I think the more we can just try and lose the fear of what these beings are, and we can have conversations, then they will start to show themselves to us, because they're not going to show themselves to us when it's going to put us all into a state of fear, because that brings us right down to the lower dimensions again.
Our healthcare system.
Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're joined by Elisabeth Hancock, a galactic researcher, spiritual coach, author, and intuitive guide. Through these transformative events, Elisabeth discovered the magic of the subconscious and superconscious mind, along with the energetic field of consciousness that connects all of us. Now she helps others tap into their intuitive, spiritual, and energetic potential, empowering them to connect with their multidimensional selves and find deeper meaning and purpose in both life and business. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of energy, intuition, and consciousness. I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, Daniel and John. And if you enjoy our content, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us grow and reach more people. Welcome to the channel, Elisabeth. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's great. I love talking about these sorts of conversations. So yeah, I'm really excited to start talking about this.
And we are as well. We could talk for hours about all of this stuff. We often do, even off camera. But to begin, could you tell us about how your awakening journey began for people that don't know you? What first inspired you to dive into this exploration and share your message with the world?
Well, I've always been like this, to be honest. I'm a Scorpio, so I think, that's sort of like, we just love the mystery, the occult, We're also natural born detectives, so any sort of area that, we want to sort of explore, research, then that's us off on it. And that's, why I've written 2 books. It's just, I just love it, I'm just trying to, I think, solve maybe like the thing that we're all trying to solve, which is, what is life? What is the true nature of reality? I think it's Google that said that the 3 most typed in questions are, who am I? Why am I here? And what am I doing? What's my purpose? And I think that this is the same question. It's the same question, but in a different way. What's reality? Realizing that reality is not what we see around us. This sort of 3D world that we have around us, that's not reality. There's a lot more than just what we can physically touch. So, but I think, like most people, I sort of shut all of this down. And then around 10 years ago, when my mom died, I think that's when it sort of catapulted for me. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. I think there's divine timing for all of this sort of stuff. I think there's a reason why we're all waking up at this particular time. We couldn't have conversations like this 20, 30 years ago. People were just completely blocked to it. They just thought you were crazy and would, have you sectioned or send you to the doctor or, whatever. But now it's sort of, people are, we're able to have conversations, which in itself shows a huge shift in our collective consciousness. The energy of the planet. We know from the Schumann resonance that the energy of the planet has been rising steadily since the 1980s. This has been speeding up the past few years. it's actually activating our DNA. And as our DNA is activated, this is activating memories, activating, if you like, our 12 strands of DNA, which from my research, all beings have 12 strands of DNA. As you probably know, we were genetically downgraded a lot, downgraded down to 2 strands. Now our DNA is activating back up to our original blueprint, if you like. And I think this is what's creating this awakening period now. And it's just going to keep going, rising. The energy is going to keep rising as we move, I think, back into 5D. I think we were 5D. And again, something happened on our planet that sort of shut us down into 3D. And we'll move back into 5D and the multidimensional self, living in a multidimensional world, which I hasten to add, the indigenous tribes have never stopped being multidimensional beings living in a multidimensional world. It was just us lot that stopped doing that.
But yeah, I completely agree with you. And I believe that something was done, that we have to start looking back at our history. And now we're starting to have more people breaking that mold and questioning the current paradigm that we have and the status quo, which I love. And listening to you speak on other podcasts, I've seen, you kind of reminded me of myself, because when I was younger, I used to get in trouble in school a lot because I would bring up these big questions that nobody seemed to be talking about, and I would get in trouble for even mentioning them. And now we have people like you and people like, even Graham Hancock, who's questioning all of this history that we've just come to accept. And we're like, hold on, there's something else going on here. And we're starting to find more evidence for that. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, we can see that a lot has happened on this planet. I think just the fact that it's been recently discovered that human DNA can be traced back 9 billion years, I think that says it all. It shows that we didn't come from here. We haven't evolved here. We originally came from another part of the universe, possibly even from a different universe, but 9 billion years is when human DNA started. And that links quite nicely with the idea that all humanoids or human DNA has come out from Lyra, originated in Lyra and spread out. And the Indian Vedas talk about how there are 400,000 humanoid species in our galaxy alone. So, there's a staggering amount of evidence to prove that we're not alone, that we're not who we think we are. We're definitely not evolved apes. And, we've been around for a lot longer than we currently know, or we've been currently taught. So it's very, very interesting. I think it's an interesting time to be alive.
Yes. I agree. Gentlemen?
Yeah, thank you so much, Elisabeth. I wanted to kind of dive a little bit more into what you're talking about with kind of the activation in different forms of our DNA, kind of that's happening across the world. Do you feel like this is a universe event that essentially we're just kind of coming into where our planet is and we're kind of phasing into other realities? Or do you feel like this is maybe something that has been very intentional with NHI trying to awaken us and influence kind of the direction of our species? Or what are some of your thoughts that you've had with that?
I also do channeling as well, and whatever anyone says about it, it's very, very good for expanding your mind, expanding your consciousness and downloading information. And when I've done this, I have felt that the entire universe is moving and shifting. But from my research, I know that our solar system is moving back into 5D. And I think it's Alex Collier that said a very interesting point, which I've been thinking about recently, and that is that 3D is going to be actually just taken out, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I know there must have been a reason why people wanted to experience 3D. 4D, my understanding of 4D is that's the astral, but it splits into 2 halves. We've got the lower 4D, which is where all the lower aggressive ETs, if you like, entities, beings exist. But then once you get past 4.5 or 4.3D, then they fall away, because everything is a vibrational frequency. Everything is made up of frequency. And when we look, I sort of think as we're moving into 5D, so I'm just going to say, so 4D, like you go up into 4D and then you're sort of moving into the more benevolent, star civilizations, if you like, and then 5D, 6D, 7D, moving on and on. But yeah, did I answer your question?
Yes, and I know that it can be like very like, I know we're all trying to figure out exactly what's happening on all these different levels. It probably is all happening at the same time. So it's just such a wide variety of experiences of what shifts or what's happening all across the map. One thing I did, we recently have interviewed a few different contactees, which they were sharing their own experiences, and where they were saying like, yeah, I was taken to like Venus, and it was a city there. Well, we know that there's not anything on Venus, right? But they were saying like, oh yeah, well it's phased, like it's a different set of like, it's a different radio station. Yeah, it's a different dimension. And he's like, it's still our Venus, but it's just on a different frequency that they have this. So if there's any humans that come around, obviously we're not going to see them, at least to the tech that we understand that we potentially have. Yeah, it's just one of those things of as we've been having our own experiences or interacting with other contactees, it's definitely been brought up time and time again in the conversation of like, oh no, there's multi-layers going on, and then there's like believed through effects that's happening more and more. There's some people have talked about, oh, we're heading, our solar system is moving into a different part of the galaxy, and they have no control over it, and they're like, well, I guess we're phasing in with the humans, or other things like that. So it's just it's really fascinating. So yeah, that's why I was just wanting to ask you that. But
yeah, I mean, I see space more as the flower of life myself. Because I think it's pockets upon pockets of dimensions. We know that it's not linear. We know it's curved from the work of Einstein, but the flower of life is one of the I think the most important symbol. But it was the one that I think Tesla and Newton and others, they felt that it basically was the universe. It's the most important symbol in the universe, but it is the universe. And when you look at how the cells form in the human body, they double. It creates the flower of life. And I'm sort of thinking, I see that space is probably like that. It's not two-dimensional. It's multi-dimensional. And the spaceships, I think, are plasma. I think consciousness is plasma, actually. And I think consciousness brings everything to life. And plasma spaceships, which are, living entities of their own. I think that it's all sort of, zipping in and out of different dimensions. I think Earth has got multiple dimensions on it. And I think that's how we will start to see different aspects of Earth. I mean, I know that there are some ancient texts that talk about islands, continents, buildings that used to be seen during the Golden Age and then are no longer seen. So is this telling us that they were seen during the Golden Age, which must have been 5D, and as we dropped into 3D, they are no longer seen because we're in 3D? And we already know that our eyes see a lot more than our brain shows us. And the thing about the mind is the mind can be hijacked, programmed. AI, it can control the mind. And that's why I always talk about our job now is to get back to the heart. I think it's no surprise that we've had our hearts traumatized and blocked. I think it's stopping us from accessing a far greater reality, and obviously stopping us from connecting to the higher dimensions, the higher frequencies as well.
Yeah, there's recently research they were doing into DMT. Chris, John, I can't remember the gentleman's name. We did talk about it in a previous episode. They were talking about how they found that the brain, so when people take high doses of DMT, the brain activity actually lowers, does not increase, which means that the brain is actually a filter, not the actual CPU processing aspect of our bodies. That
Absolutely. It's a
is
filter.
very telling to like, oh no, like this human perspective, this human experience we're having right now, we are filtering out a ton of stuff so we can kind of live our normal Homo sapien life.
Yeah.
And then you have to, once we kind of come to grips with that reality that we are non-local beings having a human experience, and that there's all these levels of reality, that just opens the kind of the book up to what is even possible, what are we even not perceiving. Also, the human eye is very limited on the range that we see in spectrum wise. We also know that through different people we know as well, and various others that have been researching into various sensor systems and tracking UAPs, is they will go through like IR sensor. They will see them running around all everywhere, but then if you weren't in that certain range of infrared, you wouldn't see them at all. But they're in these different levels where they're able to either cloak, use tech, or they're just in a different reality, and we're able to see kind of little bits and pieces of them showing through. So it's very exciting information to be coming out, and very exciting of like what are the possibilities and just moving forward, what it means for us as a species.
Also microcosm to macrocosm, like what you were saying with space, and how even looking into our DNA, and I think it goes on and on and on, and the universe repeats these patterns to the smallest scale to the largest scale in like this really beautiful way. I think that's a part of it all too.
Okay, I want to jump in here. It's great to hear the conversation going on. So this is wonderful. And there's so many questions I could ask, but I'm going to stick with one of my original ones that came through. You said that that you really started to have, what was it, a feeling of the experience when your mother passed. Now, again, just a little bit of background. Before my father died, we were living in separate states at the time, and he called me up maybe a week before he passed. And he said, Jonathan, he goes, my dad was adopted. His father had died and he was adopted. And so some of the family splintered off, okay, because there was a large family. He said, Mom came and visited me last night. Dad came and visited me last night. And they apologized and they said that they were sorry and that everything was going to be okay. And, and that they were so proud of me, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was at work at the time. So, my mind is kind of already distracted by my duties that my work has to say. And for some reason, my dad was always a very intuitive person, but he never listened to his intuition. He had the worst judgment skills. Anyway, loved him still, but not a very good judge of what to do right and wrong. And anyway, I was like, well, wow, Dad, that's kind of cool. I didn't think he was full of it or anything like that, of course. But something just did not equate with me for some reason. Timing, I don't know. And he called me a couple of days, about 3 or 4 days later, and I was busy and I didn't get back to him. And then he passed alone. And then it dawned on me that he was obviously being visited either by the spirits and the souls of his deceased parents and other family members that had died before him, that the last time he saw, he was a small child. Or, Whitley Strieber's talked about this and such, where dead relative or dead friend will suddenly show up and start talking. And the question is that an entity like impersonating that person? Is it the dead that have come in to say, hey, we love you, everything will be okay, kind of like preparation of the person, or just to get a message across? And, you have Jacques Vallée and others in the field that say that it's not the paranormal and ghosts and the phenomena and aliens. It's more like it's all one. Okay. It's just, we're seeing different filters where, they come in different ways. And I apologize for asking about the passing of your mother, and how it affected you. Now, I've had dreams with my dad, but as far as I know, he hasn't come by to give me any messages. I just found that was really strange, and it just came to my mind. But you said that had a deep impact on you when she passed. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit, if you don't mind, for our viewers?
Yeah, well, I talk about it in my first book, actually, Work Your Energy, because we had moved to Dubai, and obviously it's really, really hot here. We had tiny children. It was not possible to go out during the summer. It's too hot. And we were sort of cooped up in the flat a lot. And anyway, I started to hear my mom's voice in my head. So I just used to talk to her, and it went on for around 12 months, really. And it was quite nice, and I just sort of thought it was probably just part of the grieving process, And then one day my sister was coming to visit, and I asked her if she wanted to pass a message on. And she told me this message, and it was a really simple message. And then I told my sister, and it was so profound for her. And it just made me start to question, was I actually talking to my mother? And, of course, I now know with all the work that I do that we don't die. And, we are consciousness, and nothing dies. So I do think that I was talking to her. And at the same time, some bizarre stuff started happening in the flats as well. And it just piqued my interest, and I started to research it. And I think because I have such an analytical, logical, rational mind, I'm very grounded, I had to sort of research all this stuff to try and understand if it could be true. And it's a combination of the research and, I think, channeling. You download the information, and then you go and check it, verify it, research it to understand if it's true. So you're sort of being guided, by spirit or consciousness or, aliens or whatever it is. And so, I have heard that when we lose a loved one, that it's a little bit like having a near-death experience. It blows your mind, it blows your consciousness apart. It just, that consciousness expansion, that's what NDEs are, I think. I think losing a loved one is the same. And I'm sure there are other things as well, maybe having a car crash or something, something just sort of expands your consciousness, where it just bursts through the bubble of the mind matrix, and you suddenly see the true nature of reality in a way that you couldn't see it before.
Yeah. There's a medium actually who I followed, even took a class from. His name was John Holland, and he never had an NDE or anything like that. And a lot of NDEers, that's where my background is. I've researched into NDEs for the past 11 years, but he didn't have an NDE. He ended up being in a car crash. And then he says, after my car crash, he's like, I didn't have a scratch on me, but somehow it opened me up, and now I can connect with the people we call deceased. But I agree with you, we don't actually die. And very sensitive. He can walk into a building and feel things. They've even done blind tests where they blindfold him and then take him to a random location, take him to a building, and they're like, what do you feel? And he starts describing what's going on in the building. Sometimes he even gets emotional, depending on, if it was something very traumatic in the area. So I honestly believe that.
If I could ask a quick question about that, it just kind of popped into my head, so I apologize if it's way out there. We have reincarnation, which I've always been a firm believer in. Even when I was Catholic, I believed in reincarnation. And so if one is reincarnated, I'm also a big Law of One raw material fan. That really helped me internally. If we're thinking about reincarnation, we don't know how long it takes for our soul to decide to go into whatever body it's going to go into, a healing process, whatever you have, learning the experience, whatever have you. But I'm curious now, I just want to hear your thoughts about this, Elisabeth. If perhaps when we're seeing or having contact with deceased loved ones, even pets, and such like that, that it might not be the higher self that's actually communicating with us as the soul is going through the reincarnation process. So it's like higher self, soul, soul is going to reincarnation, but the higher self is still there in order to be able to at least communicate with us during periods of time. Does that sound far out there?
I'm not too sure what you mean. Can you repeat it?
Okay, so my belief and my understanding of the higher self is that the higher self is kind of, and you guys can correct me if you want, a higher self is kind of like the more knowledgeable wisdom part of our soul that's more connected to the universe and to the
rest of your consciousness. Yeah, it's now known as the superconscious mind. So it's actually a scientific term. It's being accepted, as it's another part of our mind. We have the conscious mind, the superconscious, the subconscious, and they're all connected. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Okay, but if so would that be like we're really going esoteric here for the average viewer that might not have been going into that, but that's like kind of like an energy source or a source that's tapped into the universal consciousness. So
no, it's because we are consciousness. So you can see us as fractals of source. We are consciousness. We are experiencing this physical reality through our senses in order to learn, experience. But we are all consciousness. Everything is connected because we're all energy. Everything is made of energy, and there are no breaks in energy. It's all one massive field of energy. And that's how quantum entanglement works. That's non-locality. That's how remote viewing works. Psychic work, everything. It's all because of that. So when we talk about our superconscious mind, we're talking about our consciousness, but not all of our consciousness, if you like, is in the physical body. So meditation allows us to connect to more to our consciousness. Most people, if they're not meditating, they'll be aware of a very small amount of themselves. But once you start connecting to your superconscious mind, you become aware of a lot more of yourself, and you become aware of more information in the universe because you're connected to all of that. So, meditating, channeling, it's giving you access to more information, if that makes sense.
It does. Well, thank you. No, that's good. I appreciate the explanation on that, and I know that some of the viewers that'll make some sense to as well. So thank you. It's just kind of one of always those, and the universe is paradoxical. It's just paradoxing upon itself to where, who knows how long it takes to reincarnate. Of course, time is irrelevant at that point.
Yeah, there is no time.
Right. But when we're experiencing the illusion of time, then we can go, okay, in our normal everyday state, I would be safe enough to say, then it seems like, well, if through the reincarnation process, and if they're reincarnated, are they? Or are they just going through the healing process, but they're still talking to us? It's just one of those kind of paradoxical kind of things that I know a lot of people have a hard time, including myself, really trying to get a grasp of it. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
It's very hard to grasp. But quantum physics, timeline theory,
yes,
they're pretty close, to the concept that we're not talking about past lives and future lives. It's all happening now. The only thing we have is now. And everything else is happening at the same time. And it's really hard to get your head around that because we've been so brainwashed into linear time and into time itself, as something, sort of concrete, and also the holographic universe theory. This really is gaining a lot of ground now. And it's showing that our entire, everything is frequency, but frequency is sound. Everything has been created by sound. And you look at cymatics, the field of cymatics, and, the music that creates the sacred geometric shapes. And these geometric shapes are the things that make up reality. So what we're seeing, we see physical reality in front of us, but it's just a whole load of, sort of geometric shapes that have all sort of been cobbled together by our eyes and our brain. But essentially, It's, the brain is a translator of frequencies, translating it into what we see in front of us. And from that point of view, where do past lives and future lives and all that sort of stuff fit into that? So it's really, really, you can just go down so many rabbit holes with this. But I do think that this reality is made up. It's a holographic reality because it's not physical. Quantum physics has pretty much evidence that we are not physical. The world is not physical. You look at the religious texts, and I think at least 3 or 4 of them talk about how the world is brought into being through sound. And that sort of, again, that's that same thing. I do think that the ancient texts, the religious texts, I do think that they are already telling us how the world was created, how the universe was created, the human being was created. I think that they're telling us all this sort of in there, but these different texts and things have been edited and changed and misinterpreted many, many times over the years. But I think the information is in there, actually.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. And I think that there are actually articles now where they're discovering that, the universe could be holographic. And, they've had many other people talk about this principle, how you can, like, for example, when you look at fractals and you look into, or, remember the hologram bookmarks? I don't know if you ever seen those or back in the day. And you could cut off like the tiniest piece of that and look inside and you would have the whole image of the whole thing. And I think that's how our universe is structured. And there was even a woman, a channeler called Barbara Brodsky, who communicated with a being called Aaron. And they were asking him questions about the nature of our universe. And he says, I am a being of light energy. And he says, you are a being of light and matter. But when you pass over, you will be a light energy being like I am. And he says that the whole structure of the universe is based off of this light, when that light is love. But for the science of it, it's all made up of light, like you're describing, which is interesting. So it's super fascinating to hear that mirrored.
Yeah, there's no matter.
It's an illusion.
Yep. Yeah, so it's all energy, and lower frequency energy it turns. You can say it sort of becomes matter because it's such a lower frequency.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we are not. We are actually beings of energy and light ourselves.
Yeah. And it would explain a lot of the phenomena that seem ghost-like or ethereal, such as people saying they're being visited by beings who came walking through their wall. Now imagine a species or a race that understood that principle and could change, matter, or, there is no matter, but they could change frequencies so that they could walk through a wall. And from someone who had no experience or understanding what that is, it would seem ghost-like, but that's not what it is.
Yeah, and there are many species that can do that. They're transdimensional. They can go through dimensions. The interdimensional beings actually are between dimensions, and they don't have physical bodies, apparently. Mm-hmm. But the transdimensional, they can, and it's what we call portals, stargates. I mean, Earth is littered with portals. I think that there are many beings that don't need to, they can be here, come through portals, you can say. But yeah, essentially, there are also beings that know how to manipulate, doing the mind manipulation to make us believe that we're seeing something that we're not. So I think there are different ways to walk through walls. But it's just advanced technology. And I think this is what our myths and our legends are all talking about. And to me, it's showing us that we used to live in a multidimensional world, at least 5D, 3, 4, 5D, all sort of living together, if you like. But I think that, there used to be a lot more. Well, I think they're sort of talking about advanced technology in a sense. But I also think that things like elementals, what we call fairies and these sorts of things, I think that these are other entities, beings that, again, are able they live in a different dimension to us, but they're able to cross into our dimension. And as you were talking about before, Daniel, you think about Skinwalker Ranch and how they're using thermal imagery technology to show that there are entities and beings around on their ranch. And the fact that these entities or beings, or they look like they're dinosaurs and dire wolves, which have gone out of existence in our world, so that what they're thinking is that they're actually seeing the past, different timelines. But when you think about quantum physics, you think that everything is happening all at once. Different dimensions, different timelines, parallel lives, it's everything. It's like this sort of huge prism, like a flower of life, a huge prism where everything is going on at the same time. I don't know. That's sort of how I feel it is. But again, I'm still exploring these things.
Well, it's kind of like, we use our telescopes. Sorry, Dan. We use our telescopes. We look out into space and we're like, oh, well, that light, we'll just, for the sake of argument, talk about, the speed of light. Okay. So that light that we're actually seeing from that star cluster may be gone. We don't know. We're just seeing that light here.
Yeah, things like spirits and supernatural phenomena. I think that this is also electromagnetism. Again, something that we just don't understand enough about.
I think that it's like they say also that because nothing is truly solid, it's just an electromagnetic resistance whenever you touch something or touch a wall or things like that. So
for me, it goes right along with the everything is happening now. If we're able to look into, quote unquote, the universe's past and see light, right, that may or may not exist there anymore, but to us in this reality, we see that light, right? Then if we're seeing that far, and I mean, even skeptics say that, sure, there's life out there in the universe. We're not the only ones. They just they don't visit us, whether that be microbial or otherwise. If something is looking back our direction, and if you take it into the idea of everything's happening at once, depending on where their location is, they could be seeing dinosaurs or even before pre-dinosaurs on Earth. Thus, the dinosaurs are still alive. Right? If I were able to go back and look at Earth from a certain distance, my father would still be alive. I could go back a little bit further. I could be a little boy. I could go back even further and not even see myself born yet. So everything is indeed happening at once. It's just being able to marry science with the spiritual aspects that if we could finally do that, I think we can really open up a lot of knowledge. And I do agree with you, Elisabeth, that the ancient past, however far back that we have records of, I believe it goes way further than that, has so much to teach us, so much that we could learn from, whether it be Paleolithic cave paintings, whether it be Aboriginal art. They painted what they saw. They passed on stories, written and otherwise, of events that have happened. You look at Nuremberg, 17 whatever, or 1569, I don't know, some ancient, real old texts on objects in the sky and stuff. That wasn't their imagination. They wrote down what they saw. This has been going on for a long time. And unfortunately, over the past several hundred years or more, we've blocked ourselves from that reality to say, oh no, all that stuff is just myth. All that's there's no valuable information there. And through that process, we've stunted our intelligence. We've stunted our spirituality. We've stunted our growth. And I think it's time that everyone should try to look back on the history that we still have available to us, start from square one, and then move forward again. And then I think we could have a better understanding. That, and with the experiences that experiencers like yourself have, is very valid. And we can't keep sweeping it under the rug as a society, as a civilization. We're not doing ourselves any services here.
I think we also have to remember that a lot has been suppressed. I mean, the Vatican has got millions of texts. The Tibetan monks have got millions of texts. The indigenous tribes, our true history is out there. All this information is out there. It's just that it's been massively suppressed. The past 120 years, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, when they sort of started all of this, but it's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. I don't know. I think that a lot of what we've been even told is just not even really true. I'm not even sure that what we've been told about space is even true, really. I just sort of question all of it. But,
and that's really the only way we're going to find answers is if we question, right? I mean, that's supposed to be the basis for science itself, is to question everything.
Science and spirituality used to be the same thing, and then it was split. And spirituality was given to the church. The church were then the ones that were to deal with all of this sort of spiritual stuff. But, the spiritual stuff is the psyche. And then in the Western world, we have psychiatrists and psychologists who deal with the mind, but they haven't been taught that, about sort of the astral, the energy fields, emotions, mental, emotion, spiritual, there's so many other aspects to our physical form. And no Western psychiatrists or psychologists even mention this stuff. They call it crazy or insanity or whatever it is. It should never have been split. Science and spirituality were always the same thing, and they were moving along in the same way. And then science became this sort of academic, rigorous thing where you have to test everything in a laboratory before it's, even real, which is why they won't accept quantum physics. Then, spirituality became this just like weird, and wacky sort of area, which, just everything just got lumped in there, and then the Hollywood movies have done a great job of brainwashing us all into believing, a whole ton of other stuff that isn't true either. So I'm not too sure that there is like one history of our world, but once all these old texts start coming out, we'll at least get to see what a history of our world is.
I agree with that. And I think that with all of this coming out, and when I say coming out, I mean like all the people sharing their experiences, because I think that's how disclosure is going to start happening, not just with ET beings and people who have those kinds of experiences, but people who are sharing their near-death experiences, because these are people from all walks of life with different cultural backgrounds, all sharing similar information about what the non-physical is, energy fields. I did an interview once with a gentleman, Jeff Tolley, and he was talking about in his near-death experience where there were different bodies he saw outside of the physical. He's like, I had a mental body, an emotional body, and based on where he was at the time, he was trying to take his own life and saw that his emotional body was dark, like it was like clouds and dark and darkness and stuff like that. And that's just where he was at, but he was actually seeing a tangible dimension, if you will, where he could see all that stuff that we normally don't perceive. It makes sense, though, because, when you look at the light spectrum and you see this tiny little sliver here where it says, human perception right there, and then you just have this expanse of other fields of frequencies of light. And we need to use special tools to perceive those for right now. But I think, like you were saying, as we expand our awareness, as we grow in consciousness, as the awareness expands, we'll be able to widen that perception. So like seeing spirits or other beings and stuff that are already there.
I think it's no coincidence that so many thousands and thousands of people are experiencing near-death experiences, because this alone is raising the consciousness. Mm-hmm. And the more people it happens to, the more the collective will raise the consciousness. Like everything is happening now to raise the collective consciousness, everything.
And I agree with that too. And I think that it's all tangible, like a lot of us. So we've talked about this off camera, where we feel something is coming. It's like weird, this shift that's happening. And the people who even have NDEs, near-death experiences, are also sharing that same message about the shift in conscious awareness that's happening on the planet right now.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if there's going to be some sort of, big event. I don't feel that there is actually, but I suppose it depends what your definition of big event is. I think probably for the awake, it's not going to look like a big event to us.
Right.
Um, and I mean, our planet is just being bombarded with these energy waves continuously, and that in itself is raising the levels of consciousness as well. So, we could just continue doing that, really, and then eventually we'll wake up one day and we think, everything's good. Everything's good on this planet.
I hope to see that soon. I mean, I know it's a stretch to wish for that in my lifetime, but I definitely hope,
It has to happen someday. So
Right.
When I do channeling, they always tell me that I will see it. And I'm older than you, so.
Oh yeah, anything is possible is what I say. And I think that tomorrow you could wake up and your whole world could be different because it happens all the time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know there are people dying. This sudden death syndrome, which has just suddenly taken over the planet and now become an accepted disorder. Syndrome.
Yeah, like recently, it was a few months back, I had a kind of channeling experience, and there was various voices interjecting, but the main point was everyone was very excited about what kept on, like, the great change is coming, the change, like, and it was like the feeling of it was it's like a birthing. It's like you're giving birth, like a labor, and like there's a big kind of the baby's coming, and it's like a build up, and then like we don't know what it looks like, right? But yeah, that's definitely been the case, like across the board. And each contactee we talk to, it's the same feeling. And I don't think it's just because of the recent U.S. disclosure or other things like that. There's something that is building behind the scenes, and that's not just contactees outside the government, but there's people inside that are potentially subconscious, or there are contactees they just don't remember, or other things, and everything's shifting around for this like greater awareness of reality.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure that the White Hats, or the Galactic Federation, or I'm not too sure that they know what's quite happening either. I think that it's all just sort of playing out, and it's just because we know that we're definitely going to get to 5D. It's already happened in other dimensions or other realities, whatever. It's already happened, but this one is a little bit slower. It's slower for us to catch up, a bit like you were saying, Jonathan, about the stars. The stars already exploded, but we haven't seen it yet. So I think I sort of that's how I see it, that we just got to catch up and just get there. That's all.
And then the labor pains come in all kinds of forms. And one of those could be political upheaval, which I won't talk about. But anyway, it can come in a lot of forms, and it's not always going to be pleasant. I know that in not getting into prophecy, but I know that a lot of channelers, a lot of remote viewers, a lot of average, quote unquote, everyday people have come down with information that it's not going to be necessarily rosy. And, sometimes the best way that we learn as a species is through, I don't want to use the term trial and error, but more just kind of like the abrupt, in your face kind of, activity. And it seems to be the only way that we at least currently want to try to learn, and when we set up for it's just kind of, it's just
I don't believe that, I think there's a lot of damaged people around in the spiritual communities who are, who really want us all to suffer.
Yeah. And no, I see that. I definitely see that. I agree with you about that. I don't think it has to be as bad as it goes, but just to switch a little bit, I think that the governments really aren't going to be the ones that.
No, the disclosure is not going to come from the government. I mean, it can't. I sat through and listened to I think it was either Stephen Greer or Alex Collier, but it was an interesting point that they made. And they were basically saying, that the US government can never admit to any of this stuff because they'll never be taken seriously ever again. and they're supposed to be the number one world, leaders. If they publicly admit that they've lied to their people, they're never going to get back from that. It can only be a disclosure from us. And I think that that's why so many of us are awakening. And as you said, Christian, you felt it was a mission. You felt that you had to go and do this thing. And we all feel like that. This isn't something that we do, for fun. This is something that we do because we feel called to do it, and we think it's going to make a bigger difference. And there's a reason why we feel like that. And I think that is the disclosure coming from us, from within. We're the ones putting the information out there, researching the information, having experiences. That in itself, that is where all this information is going to come from. It's not going to come from the governments.
Right.
Well, Elisabeth, like I told you before we recorded about my spirit box sessions in talking to these entities, which have named themselves, by the way. They say their name is M. Now, I didn't know anything about that. I looked up, months upon months later, I just stumbled about the Emerthers. I'm not sure if they are the Emerthers or not, but some possibly. Anyway, one of the prevailing messages that they always say to me is put it out there, get it out there. The message, I guess, that there's at least contact, that they do exist. Love is another one of the messages that they want us to put out there. But it's also empowering me, because as I believe they are me, I am them, we are one, as far as the universe goes. But from the people that are watching this, okay, that are experiencers, that have something to say, because more and more of us are coming out. We're not so afraid. Yes, there are some little dangers here and there. What will the family think? What will the friends think? What will the neighborhood think? Okay, put that to the side. How can Jonathan Leeser help Elisabeth Hancock, help Christian Ramirez, help Daniel Nichols, help Bobby that's down the street? Other than doing a podcast, how can we help each other out and not be so dependent upon waiting for the government to say yay or nay? Like, personally, I don't need the government to say yes or no. That's not why I'm pushing for this stuff. I want more people to be aware, to open their mind, to understand that we are not the only ones, right? And that doesn't mean a million light years away. That means like in our backyard. So how can we get together and really do a push for this?
Well, I always say to people, you've got to start by speaking your truth. You have to, because truth it's a very pure and high vibrational frequency of its own. Truth resonates with our heart. That's why, the heart is discerning. The heart knows truth. And when we speak our truth, we're actually doing what we came here to do. We're actually stepping into our own purpose. And the more of us that do that, the more we will actually be able to have these sorts of conversations. And I think it's having the conversations. We've got to get to a point where we're not scared of what ETs are. And yes, the aggressive ETs, if you like, that are in the lower fourth, those ones, yeah, we don't want to be with those, but we're moving into a higher frequency energy. And these are heart-led ones like us. And they don't mean any harm at all. They're actually trying to help us. They've been helping us for thousands of years. So I think the more we can just try and lose the fear of what these beings are, and we can have conversations, then they will start to show themselves to us, because they're not going to show themselves to us when it's going to put us all into a state of fear, because that brings us right down to the lower dimensions again. And we're trying to get away from that.
It's very true.
Anyone that works with spirit guides, and as you said, you felt that lovely hug, these are the higher dimensional beings. Yeah. These are the ones that are trying to help us. And these are the ones that they have no malice towards us at all. And we need to get to that point, I think. It's all a vibrational frequency. Everything is.
Right. And I wanted to say, to add on to that, because I've heard you mention this, that just one of us coming from that perspective, that higher level of awareness, is much more powerful than many others who aren't, And some also call that the 100 monkey effect, that not all of us technically need to wake up to make that kind of shift occur.
Yeah, the Maharishi effect, 1% of the population. However, having said that, we've easily got beyond 1% of the population. So, and I don't think it's necessarily, in terms of a tipping effect, as a collective, we've already got to a point whereby we are already now in the higher frequencies. But we had regressive ETs who were working with the deep state, and they were bombarding us with low vibrational frequencies, which essentially meant that we couldn't get that tipping effect to work, because they were always bringing the vibration of the planet down.
Well, I think, with the process of any type of change, any type of shakeup when it comes to old systems and new systems, like of government, or just, what's going on behind the scenes, potentially beneficial for people, or it can be really a strenuous time to have that transition. That's just a human experience, right? With governments and just different groups rising and falling. So, I think overall, through the situations that potentially countries, including the US, are going to be going through, it could potentially affect a lot of people. And it could be also something that is eventually beneficial. And I think we get to keep perspective about that things are moving in a certain direction, to keep in connection with source and with each other, and keeping that community and network with not just NHI that we're connected with, that have given this mission statement of progressing things forward, but also helping those that potentially, would be affected by these big changes and everything else. So I think that's always important to keep in mind.
Elisabeth, how many, you say you channel, and like Daniel, before we started recording, until I picked up the rods, the spirit box, and started reading the Law of One, I didn't really put much weight into it either. And wow, totally changed my whole perspective through those experiences. What is the purveying message or messages that you receive through channeling for the viewers, if you don't mind? Just generalize. That's okay.
Yeah, well, it's sort of the same stuff I put in my books, really. And, it's sort of the similar thing, I think, to what other people channel. Sort of the true nature of reality, the fact that everything, that everything is energy and light, the different vibrational frequencies, the different dimensions. I suppose it depends what questions I ask. And my questions over the past few years have all been around, what is the true nature of reality? Because that's been my sort of passionate question, I suppose. That's what I've been wanting to try and answer. I do feel that everything is fine. And I do appreciate what you're saying about this might actually be a difficult time for some people. And I can see that. But it's because I think we've just been so conditioned and brainwashed. And I think that in order for people to expand their consciousness, they're going to have an awakening. And I call it popping bubbles, because it sort of feels like that, when you get this sort of aha moment where you go, oh my God, now I see it. And it's like, pop, another limiting belief has gone. And every time you do that, you're just expanding your consciousness more and more and more. And I suppose that might be difficult for many people, but, I think that we have to do that. And I don't know. I've heard many people say, that not everyone will do it. Some people will be left behind and all that sort of stuff. But again, I don't believe that. I don't believe anything that's around fear, because I think there's a lot of misinformation. Anything which is going to put fear into someone's consciousness or mind, I think is not right. And I think the path for us now, it is choosing the path of love. And I don't mean love, like the romantic movies and marriage and all that sort of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Love is a vibrational frequency, and it is the highest vibrational frequency in the universe. And it's the frequency of creation. Everything is created through that frequency. I think that's what we have to do, is we have to get back to understanding what love is, and to experience and feel love every single day. Because every time we experience and feel love, we now are in the higher dimensions ourselves, in the higher frequencies ourselves. And the more times that we can experience that, the faster the world is going to change.
Agree 100%. And fear is a control mechanism. I mean, I'm not talking about, oh my goodness, there's this giant grizzly bear that I just stumbled upon kind of fear.
Yeah. And that's why fear is useful. That's where fear is useful. Yeah.
Right. Sure. But, the propaganda fear and the, always, look over your shoulder kind of fear, and the enemy from within fear, and all the fears. It's all a control mechanism. And the more we subscribe to those control mechanisms, the more we stay at that lower vibrational level. We leave no room for love. Love is the last thing we think about if we're stuck there. And that's when you mentioned that, and I don't want to misquote you, but you had mentioned essentially that there are the lower vibrational entities that are kind of, I would choose the word, in cahoots with some of the power grabber humans to kind of keep us down on that level. Of course, I've always felt that since childhood, just like I've always felt that humanity is way older than we give ourselves credit for. I think I was maybe like 6 when I thought that, we probably lived on Mars before we're here, and, and all that kind of stuff. So fear is the, as they said in Dune, fear is the mind killer, but fear is what, it's amazing how many people put shackles, although it be invisible sometimes and sometimes visible, shackles on themselves just due to fear. And it's time that we start breaking those shackles and not applying it to ourselves or our fellow man or woman, and start showing more universal love and kindness, because we are a creator species.
Yeah, we are.
What we create, what we put our intentions on, we create. And, when you see things like the Schumann resonance spiking and stuff like that, we do have an influence on this planet just as much as it has an influence on us, and that extends throughout the cosmos. And we really just need to, I'm sorry about this, Elizabeth, but we just really need to get on track. I think we're totally off the track, and I think a lot of people don't even realize there are tracks to follow. And we all have our individual paths, but we can all have them leading to one place, and that's a place of love, if we just really start focusing on that. And I think that's what a lot of the higher frequency beings, higher dimensional beings, are trying to impress upon us and help try to make us understand through our experiences and otherwise, is just doing that. And it's sounds like it would be simple, but like you said, it's not like a marriage love. I had that hug. That wasn't human love. That was, I use the term love, but that's not a correct descriptor. That's human language fails, no matter what language we speak, fails that feeling. And that was the universe love of creation.
Yeah.
So
I think probably empathy is probably the best way of describing it for us. We have to get empathy, and, we haven't grasped empathy yet as a species, or compassion, and that's what we have to get.
I just don't know. It's something that came into my mind, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling. I do apologize. It's something that came into my mind, like, I don't know, a couple months ago, was it, guys? And it was just kind of one of those things to where, what's humanity's purpose here? Like, has anybody actually sat back and thought, like, on a larger scale? Probably not, because of fear. But has anybody actually thought, like, what's our purpose? Is it just to learn and experience for the universe? Since we're part of the universe, or are we meant to be? Because we could be if we wanted to, just like the entities or NHI or us that try to give off wisdom to another civilization that is out there in the universe. Is that our calling? To spread that love, that universal love, et cetera, that positive vibration, have a positive influence on other civilizations within the universe, than what we're doing now, which is just destroying ourselves, or just, being very negative Nancy's, I guess you could say. So I would just think that we should aspire to do something on a civilization level, but everybody's just too, I don't know, selfish, concerned, afraid, a whole bunch of negative influences on why we don't even think about that on a mass scale.
Yeah, I think everyone is too scared and exhausted. There's a reason why we have such busy worlds, I also think that, yes, it's learning and experiencing, but I see it as sort of a level of consciousness. And this is actually one of the things that came through in one of the sort of channeling sessions, that everything is moving like levels of consciousness is going up and up and up and up, and like all beings and entities are doing that. And that is what our role is. It's what the role of everything is to just keep sort of expanding our consciousness, expanding it out and out and out and out and out until one day we are integrated back in with consciousness, and we're no longer an individual being or entity of our own. So all these sorts of, jobs and things like this that we have in this world, I think the creation is still there. So we are creative. We are, as you say, co-creators, but we are creatives. We're creative beings. We also have a very wide range of emotions. And I think the wide range of emotions that we have means that we can experience things that other races can't experience. So from an experiencing and learning point of view, we're able to learn and experience things that others can't. But we're also creator beings, as you say, and every being is a creator being. Just sort of we manifest our reality into being through our words, through our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. We're doing it continuously. And so I think that the purpose of life, I think, is to grow spiritually. But when I say spiritually, I'm not talking about religion or spirits or any of those things. I'm talking about, I suppose, sort of spiritual is like heart. And I think again, I know I keep saying Stephen Greer, but I think it was actually him that said that that's what human beings are doing. That's what this incarnation is all about, is to find love. We're all trying to get back to being love again. And, we're sort of navigating this very difficult path, which can be made even more difficult. But essentially, that's what we're all trying to do. I think that is. And I know that if we had time on our hands and if we were able to do things, how many of us would sort of just spend our lives just spiritually growing? And that's like just learning and amassing information and channeling information and connecting more to spirit and entities and beings around us to discover more information. And I think that is actually what all the different species and races are doing. It's just that there are quite a few regressive races in there that prefer to dominate and control others. But the benevolent ones, they're on that same journey that we're on, which is to learn about ourselves in order to learn about love.
I think that it's all part of this shift, and also seeing the different perspectives come out, because it has to play out for us to get there. So I think it's going to work out in the end.
Yeah, and I would say, actually, to everyone listening, I would say, whatever you are experiencing in your life, find the positive side of it, because there's a negative and positive way of looking and experiencing everything. And, we often experience things as negative, but there's actually always a positive way of looking at it as well. And, like you're saying, duality world that we're living in. This helps me. When things get too crazy, I find the positive in it, and then I realize that, yeah, it's just a different way of looking at it. You can look at it in either way you want, but one is more beneficial to you and the other one isn't.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, if you learn from it, that's a positive right there. So all you got to do is just learn from the experience, and that's positive. Doesn't mean that, something tragic happens to you physically or anything like that we're not saying to the audience. We're not saying, oh, wow, that was great. Yeah, I hope I go through that really traumatic experience again. But if you learn something from it, and you're able to, it makes you stronger and it helps you grow, then you can come out as a victor. It's like Taoism. You take your biggest weakness and you make it your greatest strength. And that has to come with, it's something that's within as well, right? So again, you can run away and hide from it, or you can face it. And a lot of things that are happening to us that we see as external are actually being derived from the internal, depending on how we interact with that subject at that time. Sometimes the internal will have an effect on the external will have an effect on the internal. So, really, things are what we make of them. I know that there's plenty of people that have it worse than I do, and there's some people that have it better than I do, but it's what I make of life and what I learn from it and what I enjoy. I totally do not do not believe that myself personally, that this entire lifetime here, I'm going to learn everything that I need to learn. No, I'll be doing this. I'll be doing this again, whether that's here or whether that's somewhere else, because as far as I know, I came from somewhere else to come here to help people.
Do it on a higher frequency.
Yes.
In a higher dimension. And I think that's the key. That's what I was sort of thinking by levels of consciousness.
Yes.
We can complete this level of consciousness and then decide to carry on our journey, our experiencing in a higher frequency of consciousness, which is going to mean a much nicer reality for us to experience in. I think that we incarnate back into the level that we left the last incarnation in. So I would sort of urge everyone to allow your soul to evolve, to expand. Try and forgive yourself, forgive all the people around you. Try to release all those low vibrational trapped emotions. So I do past life regression therapy with people. And if you don't let the emotions go in that life, your body stores them. And this is the field of epigenetics. And it gets passed down to the next generation, which could even be you. As you know, you may incarnate back into that one. But if you can try and release as much, like don't hold regret, don't hold resentment, even grief, that's low vibrational. So don't hold on to shame. All these things, let all of this stuff go before you leave this incarnation so that you can incarnate into a higher level frequency than the one that you left.
That comes up a lot in a lot of the hypnotherapy cases that I've gone through, and a lot of them mention that there's no judgment or anything. You're not going to be judged because everyone's at their own level of awareness. You have forever to figure it out. However, if you don't let it go, and you don't have to come back here specifically to resolve it, but more than likely your soul might choose to come back here to get it right, or come back to a similar experience, different faces, different people, but similar circumstances to, transcend whatever it is you were having trouble with. So that comes up a lot. So I agree with that. And I think you said all of that beautifully. I think it's a perfect place to end. But before we do, how can people reach you if they want to contact you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you can connect with me on my website. Go to my website, which is elisabethhancock.com. And that's, as you see it, with my name, Elisabeth with an S. I'm also on YouTube at Elisabeth Hancock, and I have a podcast called The Great Awakening. And I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, under Elisabeth Hancock Author.
Yeah, and I'll put that up on screen for you.
And I have 2 books as well. Work Your Energy, which is essentially, it's the story of my awakening and how it happened for me. And then my latest book, which just came out last month, that is called Human Origins, the Multiverse, and Our Star Ancestry. And that's sort of like, a potted history of where we began and where we are now and where we're heading next.
Well, that's actually a good read. I'm going to have to check that out. Thank you, Elisabeth. Yeah. That's very cool.
Check that out, guys, up on the screen. I'm going to put it up on the screen for everyone to see. Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
And of course, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. It was a wonderful discussion, Elisabeth. I know that we could probably talk more for hours and hours, but maybe you could consider at some point in time coming back to the show.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Your cat as well.
Yeah, and the cat as well. The cat has to.
She wants to go out.
And let's have Dubai's golden cage open a little bit. Let's open the door. You make sure that you and your husband and your wonderful cats stay cool. Again, we really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to have you here. And I go ahead and encourage everybody to check out all of your media, your podcast, your websites, your books. Just follow you.
Yeah. I mean, I've got group programs and one-to-one programs as well. We teach psychic development, there's all sorts of things, but you can find it all on my website. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Our healthcare system. 0.